Hi everyone, my name's Zach and I'm a recovering addict. This week we're going to be talking about a therapy. So psychotherapy that I have been doing for just over 2 years now. 2 years and 1 month clean, just a week ago. So I obviously did a video about how to get clean and stay clean and building a recovery plan that works. And within that, I've broken down the separate parts, change your friends, change your life. Now I want to go on to the therapy part, and obviously I'll do a separate video on 12-step fellowships and how they've worked and be more detailed about that. But yeah, this won't take as long, probably 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes, we'll see. But really just wanted to break down where therapy started, how it's grown, how it's evolved, and how it's changed my life dramatically, how it helped me through my addiction, but then changed to help me become the person I want to be. But most importantly, how to understand why I am the way I am, why there are certain things about me that I really didn't like and that were there as behaviors anyway. And I was doing things that really disagreed with the kind of person I wanted to be and the kind of person I knew I really was underneath. So for me, I guess working right from the beginning, if we work back and start with my first sort of rounds with therapy, and that was when I went to rehab in April 2019. And I still have the same therapist that I actually had in that rehab. He left and went on to doing work for a different rehabilitation centre, but I stayed in touch with him after I left and privately work with him for the last 2 years and 1 month. And when I was in rehab, therapy was a real challenge for me. It was something that, for me, I found it really hard to connect to some of the dark parts of my past. I found it really challenging to express or feel the pain from my childhood, particularly around my mum, around my dad, around the abuse, the violence and the neglect and the sheer chaos of the environment that I was in. And it was the intent of the therapists and of, the rehabilitation centre as a whole, to push us into being vulnerable, being willing to look at these dark parts of our past and understand them more. Because in reality, today or in the present, those moments, those traumas, those events, those relationships have hugely, profoundly affected me as a person today, and everyone who has suffered in any way, shape or form through any sort of level of trauma. It doesn't necessarily have to be a childhood. It could, or parents. It could be any sort of a traumatic event. It could be, like a cataclysmic event for you, in terms of, life-changing, and completely takes you off of the path that you were meant to be on. And I feel that my upbringing and my childhood certainly did that for me. But I'm able to say that now from a position with new perspective, because I've done over 2 years of therapy on it. But at the beginning, it was so hard for me to connect to my emotions on this, because it was so painful. It was so unbearably painful for me I could talk about it, I couldn't feel it, and there was a difference. I could flippantly tell you anything that happened in my childhood, the abuse and the violence, everything. It was, I'd reel it off like it was nothing. But the reality was that it really did hurt, and I got to a point where I got so upset with myself for not being able to do what the therapist wanted me to do, and that was stay with the feeling. I couldn't stay with the feeling of how much I was hurt by the things that had happened. And I cried for the first time a lot, because I was so frustrated with myself that that I couldn't do what they were asking of me, and that was to connect and stay with this pain and let myself feel the agony that I needed to feel in order to process it and move forward. Now, in rehab, you know, we went over lots of different things, life stories, and, you know, 0 to 15 and 15 to now in terms of age and life events, things that had happened. And there's been, you know, several things that I had to go through. And the thing about therapy, I think, if you're processing trauma, there's a saying that works really well with this, and it's the thing that we need most in life is in the place that we're least prepared to look. And that's a really important sound. I think it's Carl Jung who said that. And from what I took out of that phrase is that it related to me in a way where I look at my past now, I look at the traumas, I look at the things that have happened to me, I get to know them. I didn't want to, but I've gotten to know them. I've gotten to understand them. And in doing so, it has given me so much more awareness about how those events affected me as a person and how they play out in my day-to-day life in the present, and why there are certain things about me that I dislike, that disagree with who I am as a person, who I want to be, and they are directly linked to so many of the things that happened, particularly around my mother and relationships towards women, and things I did throughout my childhood and, you know, young adult life, you know. And I didn't understand why I was doing these things. You know, I was dishonest and disloyal to friends, and, you know, I was sabotaging friendships, sabotaging relationships. It's almost like I just didn't want to be happy. But when I did these things, I was like, why do you keep doing this? Why? You know, I was so frustrated and angry with myself, and it made me hate myself even more than I already did, you know. But ultimately, the biggest thing about, you know, my therapy, the understanding of how much I don't feel or hadn't felt good enough for anything or anyone, whether it be attractive, whether it be intelligent, whether it be wanted or loved or liked. You know, I never felt good enough for any of those things, and I didn't know that. I'd buried it so deep and protected it so well, and I didn't know that I'd done that subconsciously. You know, as a child, I'd buried all of this stuff, and I created this personality that was really confident, really cocky, really arrogant, fearless, and that no one could ever hurt. And that guy was built by me to protect myself, to protect that secret, you know, that burial of feelings, of truths about myself. And, you know, and as I'm just talking through, you know, these understandings and awarenesses that I've got, this is what I've started to understand through digging through therapy every week for the last 2 years. And, you know, I never understood any of this. And you know, it's like a Christmas present. You know, you have to take it off. You know, the first is the ribbon, and you take the ribbon, and you open a bit of the wrapping paper, and then a bit more. Then you rip the wrapping paper off. Right, and then you've got the box. Right, okay, then you've got to undo the box, and you've got to take the lid off the box. Then there's wrapping paper inside the box, and you've got to open the wrapping paper until you get to the real deep fucking dark problem of really some of the biggest secrets of yourself that define you as a person, or have defined you up until this point. And that's if the thing we need the most is in the place we're least prepared to look, and that's where it is, and that's within us. So when we're looking externally for all of these things to make us feel better about who we are, to give us that self-worth, to tell us we're good enough, that we're likable, that we're lovable, we look to other people, relationships, friendships, you know, partners, and etc. So we always look externally. And I say we, I keep addressing it, should be I looked. You know, that's how I looked for things, and I needed that. And then obviously the drugs came into it as well, and they helped me upkeep this fake persona and attitude and personality that I'd created until they didn't anymore. They made me numb and ill and void of any real personality at all, apart from sad and angry and lonely and dismissive and short-tempered and all horrible traits, and just enhancing all of the horrible things that had happened, had been created within me over the years of feeling this way about myself. But the problem is that for me, I didn't understand what had happened, and this I didn't understand. I didn't know. I wasn't aware of these changes and how these events had affected me. And then I went through, young adult life, behaving in ways that actually, by burying these secrets and not being honest with myself about how I felt about who I was, and being honest about that, I don't feel good enough situation that was going on. And I couldn't have been honest about it because I didn't even know, because I buried it so well to keep myself protected. And as a child, it was like in a locked safe within a safe within another safe, buried under, somewhere. I always consider it to be underneath my heart and buried there, and that's how I always feel where it was. And now it's kind of now I've been able to unpack it all and look at it and become comfortable with what happened and how it affected me. It's enabled me to sort of move forward and let go and really start to build on self-worth and build more genuine personality traits to who I am and who I really wanted to be and who I would have always been, and hopefully more than I would have been even if I hadn't had any of these traumatic events happen. So yeah, therapy for me, it has unpacked so much and helped me in ways that I probably can't articulate well enough in a video, because I'm not as intelligent as I'd like to be. But for me, I can't stress enough how important it's been for me to overcome, certainly from the trauma perspective, and in understanding that trauma and in understanding how I felt about myself, understanding why I created this personality, why I did things that didn't agree with me. It's enabled me to realise that I wasn't this horrible person that was just going to be a drug addict for the rest of my life, that I was just broken. I was broken from the inside, and drugs just fueled that damage and increased it, and if anything, made me believe even more that I was that person. I was just bad. I was just not good. I was just willing to hurt others and hurt myself and not feel anything about it, because that's what the drugs enabled me to continue doing, and pushed and promoted it and isolated me. But through understanding all of this, it's made me realize that the drugs were never really a solution to anything, and also I don't need them. I don't ever need them to enhance or try and make me better or make me look better or make me feel better. In going through the pain of revisiting the traumatic events, doing that in a safe environment, in a safe space with a therapist, in rehab too, I experienced unprecedented emotional pain for me, and I got through it. And it was very hard, and I had outside support when I finished these therapy sessions, and sometimes I was in tears for a few days. But what happens is, when you process things like that and you go through the pain naturally, and you don't use your substance and you don't pick up, and you use other tools like spending time with friends, being honest and vulnerable about where you're at and what you've just gone through in therapy with for me, it was my sponsor from my 12-step program, and spent so much time with him, and being honest and vulnerable about what I was going through. And in doing all of that, I realized that I didn't need to use to cover or cope with pain. I was capable of doing it naturally, and I was capable of processing things. And when I continued to behave in ways that I still disagreed with in certain areas of my life, because I spent a lifetime living a certain way and reacting poorly to certain situations, certain triggers that made me become very defensive and argumentative when I didn't want to be, and these things kept happening even though I was doing therapy. But over time, I was able to get to a place where I was stopping the behavior before it happened. The thoughts may come in, this is what I want to do. Oh, I want to want to go mental at this person. I want to rip their head off. And sometimes I did, you know, and I didn't feel good about it. And I had to always go back and apologize, even though when they were in the wrong because of my behavior. I then had to go back and apologize because of how I'd reacted to the bad thing they'd done. And that was frustrating me even more. So going through that process of learning about certain things in my behavior that I didn't want, that didn't serve me, reporting back to my therapist going, this incident happened, I reacted poorly, why did it trigger me, what did it bring up, you know, how did it attack this self-worth, this worthlessness feeling, or, you know, what about it? And, you know, I'd link it to either a childhood trauma or this or that, the other, whatever it was. I'd work through it and I'd understand it, and I would then be able to, the next time it come up, go, oh, it's not this situation or this person that's making me feel as angry as I do right now. The response that I really want to give right this second is not going to be okay. Right, let me step back. Let me give it 24 hours and let me then go and address this problem. And that's what I started to do, you know, not addressing people immediately when they upset me or I was triggered. I would give it 24 hours and then I would, you know, go back and try and be a little bit more calm and constructive in the way I responded to someone who had done something that may have upset me. But it took time, you know, and it didn't happen overnight. You know, I'm talking months and over a year before I started to really curb some of these behaviours. And I still have today, you know, sometimes where I am triggered and I'm just, you know, I'm unable to curb my initial reaction. But I can apologise a lot quicker and I can very quickly withdraw back from the behaviour and know it was wrong. And but I'm not perfect. I'm human, you know, and I've got 30 plus years of behaving this way and I'm trying to undo. So you have to be kind to yourself and you have to be patient with yourself and know that you will continue to, unfortunately, make the same mistakes again and again. But you will start to learn from them if you're consistent with your therapy and you're consistent with becoming aware of yourself and understanding where these behaviors come from. And when you react to things in ways that you disagree with, that disagree with who you are as a person, and you don't want those behaviors anymore, then, and you're willing to do the work to let go of them, then you will get the rewards. And, you know, I'm slowly but surely, I'm shaping myself into the person I've always really wanted to become and the person I thought I should always be, and I hope maybe more, because I've been through so many bad things now, and it's, you know, I've been through lots of terrible events in my life. I've done terrible things. I've been on the receiving end of terrible things, and, you know, those things have also helped shape me, I think. Now I'm out the other end into a more understanding and capable human in lots of different scenarios. And so yes, I feel, for me, that's kind of how therapy has helped me, you know, and in doing this, you know, you better your life for yourself and everyone around you. You know, I think of therapy as the biggest investment into yourself that you could possibly make. There is nothing, there should be no stigma, there should be no embarrassment or shame over having therapy. You should be promoted and you should be praised and applauded for going to therapy, because it is such a beneficial thing for every person to do. I personally feel that it should be mandatory for children from the age of 12 till the age of 17 to compulsorily be put into therapy monthly at school, because there's so much going on at that stage of life that we need to understand about ourselves and how we're coping and how difficult it is, you know, to get through those years. So yeah, I personally feel, don't be scared of this. Yes, there will be some potentially painful moments you're going to go through, but it's always short term and it's only temporary pain. And in learning to go through that pain, you know, we learn how to cope with pain on a more natural and productive and healthy way, so that we can, you know, learn to also put down those substances that we seem to go to try and cover up or try and mask that pain or cope with it. But if you're practicing regularly with your therapist in that safe space how to cope and process pain, emotions coming out, tears and screaming or whatever it may be, you know, I've not really screamed, to be honest, but you know, some might, and it's just a case of practice and keep going and be consistent, and know that all this is the biggest investment into me. And we stop looking externally for those answers on those gratifications and those validations from other people. We start to build, and we start to unpack what's broken, and then we mend it, and we start to piece a new you back together from the inside. And then your self-worth really starts to be true. Your self-worth is the hints in the name. It's self-worth. It comes from self. There's no one externally who's going to give you it, and there's nothing externally that's going to give you it on a permanent basis. You might get instant gratification and validation from people that might make you feel momentarily distracted from what's going on underneath, but that pain that you may have is always there, and nothing externally, in my experience, would ever heal it. There is work to do on the inside. It's an inside job. Self-worth has to be grown from self. So yeah, that is my 20 minutes on therapy, and obviously how it relates to addiction and growth in life in general. So I hope it's been informative. Please click and subscribe. I really would like to do more of these videos and make it something that's really helpful and well known and widely used by people who can utilize the skills and experiences that I've had and built over the last couple of years, and throughout all my life, of course, as well, and everything that I've been through. So yeah, please click and subscribe, share with whoever you think this video might be useful to. I hope to see you again next week. Take care.